The rain in the Pacific Northwest does not wash things away. It presses them down. It pushes the pine needles into the mud. It presses the fog against the window panes. And for Master Chief Caleb Ward, retired, it seemed to press the silence deeper into the floorboards of his sprawling modern home. Caleb was a man carved from granite and discipline. At 42, his body still carried the lethal efficiency of 20 years in the Navy SEAL teams. He moved through his own house like an operator in hostile territory, silent, observant, and utterly detached. Since his wife Sarah had passed away 2 years ago from a sudden aneurysm, Caleb had converted his grief into a regimen. He woke at 0400. He ran 10 miles through the freezing drizzle. He ate a calculated intake of proteins and fats. He managed his investment portfolio. He read military history. He spoke to no one. His home, a masterpiece of glass and timber overlooking the Puget Sound, was not a home. It was a perimeter. It was a fortress designed to keep the world out, or, perhaps, to keep his own ghosts in. The only variable in Caleb's equation was Elena Morales. Elena was the housekeeper. Caleb had inherited her employment from Sarah. When Sarah was alive, the house had been filled with laughter, the smell of roasted garlic, and the sound of jazz records. Elena had been part of that warmth, a quiet, efficient woman in her late 20s with eyes that always seemed to be scanning for something to fix, something to polish, something to heal. Now, under Caleb's regime, Elena had become a phantom. Caleb required absolute order. If a coaster was moved, he noticed. If a book was misaligned by a millimeter, he corrected it. Yet, Elena never failed. She arrived at 0900, hours after Caleb had finished his morning workout, and retreated to his study. She departed at 1500, usually while Caleb was out on his afternoon ruck march or handling business in the city. They rarely exchanged more than a nod. "Good morning, Mr. Ward." "Morning, Elena." That was the extent of their relationship. A transaction. He paid her well, better than the market rate, not out of kindness, but out of a desire to avoid turnover. New people meant new variables. New variables meant chaos. Caleb hated chaos. But today, the chaos was internal. It was a Tuesday in late November. The sky was a bruising shade of purple and gray. Caleb sat in his study, staring at a spread of tactical maps from a mission in the Hindu Kush, a mission from a lifetime ago. He wasn't reviewing them for work. He was reviewing them to remember what it felt like to have a purpose, to have a team, to be necessary. His phone buzzed. A notification from his security system. Motion detected. Garage entry. Caleb checked his watch. 08:55. Elena was 5 minutes early. He watched the feed on his monitor. He saw her small, sturdy Toyota Corolla pull into the driveway. She got out, but she didn't move with her usual fluid efficiency. She paused by the trunk. She looked over her shoulder, scanning the tree line of the dense forest that bordered Caleb's property. Caleb frowned. Situational awareness, he thought. She's checking her 6. It was a small detail, something a civilian wouldn't notice. But Caleb noticed everything. The way her shoulders were hunched, the tension in her neck. She opened the back door of her car and leaned in, retrieving a large duffel bag. It looked heavy, much heavier than her usual cleaning supplies. She hoisted the bag onto her shoulder, looking around one last time before hurrying to the side door. Caleb zoomed in on the camera feed. His heart rate didn't spike. It never did. But his curiosity was piqued. Why was she bringing a large bag into the house? She had every cleaning tool known to man already stocked in the utility closet. He watched her enter the house. He switched cameras to the kitchen. Elena dropped the bag on the island, her chest heaving. She didn't start cleaning. She poured a glass of water, her hands shaking so badly she spilled some on the granite counter. Caleb's instincts, honed in the most dangerous places on Earth, whispered to him, "Something is wrong. The pattern has broken." He considered going downstairs, confronting her. But the part of him that avoided human connection held him back. "It's not your business, Caleb. As long as the house is clean and she leaves on time, it's not your business." He turned off the monitor. He forced himself back to his maps. But for the first time in 2 years, the silence of the house felt different. It didn't feel empty. It felt occupied. And Caleb Ward had no idea that the fortress he had built to keep the world out was about to be breached from the inside. The routine broke 3 weeks later. It was a Thursday. Caleb had a meeting with his financial advisor in downtown Seattle. He was scheduled to be out of the house until 17 words. He left the house at 08 Baird, leaving the security system on staff mode, which allowed Elena entry but kept the perimeter alarms active. The meeting was a disaster. His advisor was pushing him to invest in a tech startup, talking about disruptive synergy. Caleb felt a headache blooming behind his eyes. The noise of the city, the pretension, the endless chatter. It was suffocating. "I'm done," Caleb said, standing up in the middle of the presentation. "Mr. Ward, we haven't discussed the quarterly projections. Email them." Caleb walked out. He needed the sanctuary of his fortress. He needed the silence of the sound. He drove his black truck back toward the coast, the tires humming on the wet asphalt. He checked the time, 13:30. He would be home 3.5 hours early. Usually, he would text Elena to let her know. It was common courtesy. But today, his mind was clouded with a heavy, shapeless grief that often hit him around the holidays. Sarah loved Christmas. She would have had the house decorated by now. The emptiness of the passenger seat beside him felt like a physical weight. He didn't send the text. He just wanted to get home, lock the door, and sit in the dark. When he pulled into his long, winding driveway, he noticed Elena's car was parked closer to the house than usual, right up against the garage doors, almost hidden by the landscaping hedges. Concealment, his mind registered. He parked his truck and killed the engine. The silence rushed back in, but it was accompanied by the sound of rain drumming on the roof. He stepped out, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. He approached the front door. It was locked. He keyed in his code. The mechanism clicked, and the heavy door swung open. Immediately, he smelled it. It wasn't the smell of lemon polish or bleach. It was the smell of eucalyptus and toast. Caleb stepped into the foyer, closing the door silently behind him. He didn't call out. Old habits die hard. You don't announce your presence until you know the landscape. He moved through the hallway, his steps soundless on the hardwood. The house was warm, warmer than he kept it. He usually kept the thermostat at a crisp 68 degrees. It felt like 74 in here. He reached the kitchen. On the counter, there was a plate with the crusts cut off a piece of toast, a half-eaten apple, a plastic cup with a cartoon character on it, something pink and bright. Caleb stopped. He stared at the cup. SpongeBob? No, something else. A princess? He didn't own plastic cups. He didn't eat white bread toast. And he certainly didn't cut the crusts off. A cold precision settled over him. Who is in my house? He checked the cleaning schedule in his head. Elena should be in the master bedroom or the library at this hour. But the house was dead silent. Then he heard a sound. It was faint, coming from the upper level. A rhythmic, wheezing sound, like a machine struggling to intake air. Or a cough. A deep, barking cough that sounded painful. Caleb's eyes narrowed. He moved to the staircase. He bypassed the squeaky third step. He knew every inch of this terrain. He ascended, his hand brushing the railing, ready to react. The sound was coming from the master suite. his bedroom, the sanctuary he allowed no one into, except for cleaning. As he reached the landing, he saw steam billowing out from under the bathroom door. The door was cracked open an inch. The humidity in the hallway was thick. Is she taking a shower? In my bathroom? The thought was absurd. Elena was the epitome of professionalism. In 2 years, she had never even taken a glass of water without asking, until that day with the bag. For her to be using his personal shower, it didn't fit the profile. Caleb moved closer to the door. The coughing sound was louder now. It was wet, desperate. "Breath, baby. Breathe," a voice whispered. It was Elena. Her voice was strained, terrified, just like we practiced. In and out. Caleb froze. Baby? He wasn't dealing with an intruder in the traditional sense. He was dealing with a breach of trust, a violation of his solitude. He reached the door. He didn't knock. He didn't ask permission. He pushed the door open with a firm, controlled motion. Elena! His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the steam like a knife. The bathroom was like a sauna. The mirrors were completely fogged over. The shower was running at full blast, the hot water pounding against the tiles, creating a thick, white mist that swirled around the room. Caleb stepped inside, the heat hitting his face instantly. Elena screamed. It wasn't a scream of vanity or shame. It was a scream of pure, primal protection. She was sitting on the floor, on the bath mat, fully clothed in her uniform, gray scrub pants and a tunic. She was soaked through, her hair plastered to her skull, water dripping from her nose. But she wasn't alone. Wrapped in her arms, clutched against her chest like a lifeline, was a child. A small girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. The girl was dressed in oversized pajamas. Her face was flushed red, her eyes wide and terrified, her mouth gaping open as she struggled to pull air into her lungs. Strider, Caleb's medic training, identified the sound instantly. High-pitched wheezing, upper airway obstruction or inflammation. Elena scrambled backward, dragging the child with her until her back hit the vanity cabinet. She shielded the girl with her body, looking up at Caleb with eyes that were wild with panic. "Mr. Ward, please, I can explain." Elena gasped, her voice trembling. Please, don't call the police. Please." Caleb didn't move. He stood in the doorway, a towering figure in a dark rain jacket. He looked at the woman who had cleaned his house for years, the woman he thought he knew. He saw the terror in her face. But more importantly, he saw the blue tinge forming around the little girl's lips. Cyanosis. Hypoxia. The tactical situation in his brain shifted. The breach of protocol file was closed. The medical emergency file was opened. "Elena," Caleb said. His voice changed. The coldness dropped away, replaced by a command authority that brooked no argument. "Move." "No, I won't let you." "She's not getting enough oxygen," Caleb interrupted, stepping forward. He didn't look at Elena. He looked at the child. "Is it asthma? Croup?" Elena blinked, stunned by the shift in his tone. Croup? It's croup. She gets it when it rains. The cold. I didn't have the medicine. The steam usually helps." Caleb dropped to one knee. The floor was wet. He ignored it. He moved with a speed that startled Elena, but his hands, when they reached out, were surprisingly gentle. "Let me see her." Elena hesitated for a fraction of a second, but the desperation in the girl's wheezing made her yield. She loosened her grip slightly. Caleb looked at the girl. She had dark, curly hair like Elena, and big brown eyes that were filled with tears. She was gasping, her little chest retracting visibly with every breath. It was a terrifying sight for a parent. But Caleb had seen men try to breathe through collapsed lungs in the dirt of foreign countries. He knew the look of panic, and he knew that panic killed faster than the injury. "Hey there," Caleb said softly to the girl. "My name is Caleb. That's a nasty cough you got." The girl stared at him, too breathless to speak. "Elena," Caleb said, not looking away from the child. "The steam is good, but it's too hot in here. She's overheating, which is spiking her heart rate. We need cool, moist air, not a sauna." I thought," Elena stammered. "Turn off the shower," Caleb commanded. "Now." Elena scrambled up and twisted the handle. The roar of the water ceased. The silence that followed was filled only by the girl's harsh, barking rasp. "We're going outside," Caleb said. He didn't wait for permission. He scooped the child up into his arms. She was incredibly light. She stiffened for a moment, looking at her aunt, but Caleb held her securely, his arms supporting her back, her head resting on his broad shoulder. "Wait! Where are you taking her?" Elena cried, grabbing his arm. "The deck," Caleb said, calm. "The air outside is cold and damp. It will shrink the swelling in her trachea faster than this steam. Trust me." He looked her in the eye. For the first time, they truly looked at each other. Not as master and servant, but as two humans in a crisis. Elena saw something in his gray eyes that she hadn't expected. Competence. And concern. She let go of his arm. "Okay." Caleb carried the girl out of the bathroom, through the bedroom, and slid open the glass door to the private balcony. The cold November air rushed in, biting and fresh. He stepped out, sheltering the girl from the direct rain with his body, but letting the cold air wash over her face. "Breathe the cold air, little one," Caleb murmured, rubbing her back in slow, rhythmic circles. "Look at the trees. See the fog? Breathe in the fog." Elena stood in the doorway, shivering in her wet clothes, watching. Minutes passed. Slowly, miraculously, the barking cough began to subside. The gasping turned into deeper, smoother breaths. The blue tint faded from the girl's lips. Her little body, which had been rigid with fear, began to relax against Caleb's chest. "Is she okay?" Elena whispered. Caleb checked the girl's pulse against her neck. It was fast, but steadying. "She's stabilizing," Caleb said. He turned to face Elena. The adrenaline of the medical crisis was fading, and the reality of the situation was settling in. He stood there on his balcony, holding a strange child, looking at his wet, shivering housekeeper. "Elena," Caleb said, his voice low and serious, "who is this?" Elena wrapped her arms around herself, looking small and defeated. She looked at the floor, then at the girl, then back at Caleb. "Her name is Sophia," Elena said, her voice breaking. "She's my niece, and she's not supposed to be here." "Why is she here?" Caleb asked. Elena took a deep breath, the cold air stinging her lungs. "Because if she wasn't here, she would be in the system, or worse, she would be with him." Caleb didn't ask who him was yet. He saw the look in Elena's eyes, the look of a cornered animal protecting its young. He knew that look. He had worn it himself many times. "Let's go inside," Caleb said. "We need to dry off. And then, you're going to tell me everything." He walked back inside, carrying the sleeping child into the fortress that was no longer silent. Caleb Ward's living room was a study in minimalism. Gray sectional sofas, a glass coffee table, abstract art that meant nothing to him but matched the rugs. It was a room designed for a magazine, not for living. Now, however, it looked like a field hospital. Sophia, wrapped in one of Caleb's thick cashmere throws, was asleep on the sofa. Her breathing was still raspy, but rhythmic. The crisis had passed, leaving behind the exhaustion that follows adrenaline. Elena sat on the edge of the adjacent armchair. She had changed out of her wet scrubs into a set of spare clothes she kept in her car, jeans and a sweatshirt. She held a mug of tea Caleb had made her. Earl Grey. She hated Earl Grey, but she held it like it was a holy relic, seeking warmth. Caleb stood by the fireplace. He hadn't changed. He was still in his damp jacket, standing at parade rest, watching them. "Start from the beginning," Caleb said. It wasn't a request. It was a command issued by an officer who needed intel to assess the threat level. Elena looked at Sophia, brushing a stray curl from the child's forehead. "My sister, Maria, she died 6 months ago. Car accident." Caleb's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered. "Loss. We share that terrain. I'm sorry. Maria was... She had a hard life," Elena continued, her voice quiet. "Sophia's father is not a good man. He was in and out of prison. Drugs, violence. When Maria died, the state looked for the father. He has rights, they said. Unless he is proven unfit, he gets custody." "And you filed for guardianship?" Caleb asked. "I tried," Elena said, bitterness edging into her tone. "I'm a single woman. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in a bad neighborhood. My income, it's good, thanks to you, but on paper, I don't look like the better option compared to a father who suddenly cleaned up his act for the court. He has a lawyer, a shark. They granted him temporary custody." She looked up at Caleb, her eyes blazing. "Mr. Ward, he sells meth. I know he does. He just hasn't been caught recently. If Sophia goes with him, she won't survive. She has severe asthma. He smokes. He doesn't care. So you took her," Caleb stated. "I didn't steal her," Elena defended fiercely. "I picked her up from school the day the transfer was supposed to happen. I just didn't take her back. I told the social worker we were going on a trip. Then I stopped answering the phone. I moved out of my apartment that night." Caleb processed this. Kidnapping, custodial interference, felonies. "Where have you been sleeping?" Caleb asked. Elena hesitated. She looked at the floor. "Here." Caleb paused. "Here, in the guest quarters above the detached garage," Elena confessed. "You never go there. It's full of old boxes. I have a key, obviously. We sneak in after you go to sleep. We leave before you wake up. During the day, she stays in the guest room closet with her iPad and headphones while I clean. She knows the rules. The quiet game. She's very good at it." Caleb felt a strange sensation in his chest. Shock, certainly, but also a begrudging respect. He had been living with 2 ghosts for weeks and hadn't known. His perimeter had been breached not by force, but by desperation and discipline. And today? "The storm triggered her chest," Elena said, tears welling up again. "Her inhaler ran out yesterday. I was waiting for my paycheck to clear to buy a new one cash. I can't use insurance. They'll track us. She started turning blue. I panicked. The steam, it was the only thing I could think of. I knew you were gone until 5. Caleb looked at the sleeping girl. He saw the vulnerability. He saw the innocent casualty of a war she didn't choose. "You know the police are likely looking for you," Caleb said. "An Amber Alert?" "No." Elena shook her head. "Not yet. The father, he doesn't want the police involved. He knows they'll look at his house, too. He's hired someone. A private investigator. I've seen a car following me twice. That's why I brought her inside today. I was scared to leave her in the garage." Caleb walked to the window. He looked out at the driveway. The rain was coming down harder now. Darkness was falling. He was a man who followed rules. He was a man who believed in order. Elena had broken the law. She had trespassed. She had lied. But Caleb Ward was also a SEAL. And the first rule of the teams was simple. You protect the weak. He turned back to Elena. "This private investigator, describe the car. A gray sedan. Chevy Impala, maybe? Late model. Tinted windows." Caleb nodded. He walked over to the security panel on the wall. He tapped the screen, bringing up the external cameras. He cycled through the feed from the front gate. "Is that it?" he asked, pointing to a grainy image captured 30 minutes ago. A gray sedan parked just down the road, idling. Elena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Yes, that's him. Caleb stared at the screen. The car was sitting just outside his property line, watching, waiting. "He knows you're here," Caleb said. "He's waiting for you to leave." Elena stood up, panic rising again. "I have to go. I have to get her out. If he finds us here, he'll cause a scene. I can't drag you into this, Mr. Ward. You've been kind. I'll leave." She moved toward Sophia. "Sit down, Elena." The voice was calm, low, and terrifyingly absolute. Elena froze. "Mr. Ward?" Caleb looked at her. "You walk out that gate, he takes the girl. He calls the cops, shows them the custody order, and you go to jail. Sophia goes to the father. That is the tactical reality." I have to try." "No," Caleb said. "You don't." He walked over to the fireplace and picked up a poker, adjusting a log unnecessarily. The flames reflected in his eyes. "You're fired," Caleb said. Elena felt her heart stop. I understand. I'm sorry." "You're fired as my housekeeper," Caleb corrected, "because, as of this moment, you are my guests." Elena stared at him, unable to process the words. "What? If that man comes onto my property," Caleb said, turning to face her, his posture straightening into full combat readiness, "he is trespassing. If he threatens my guests, he is a hostile threat." "Why?" Elena whispered. "Why would you do this? You don't know us." Caleb looked at the sleeping girl again. He remembered the feeling of her small lungs expanding against his chest on the balcony. He remembered the silence of his house, the crushing weight of his own solitude. "Because," Caleb said, "I know what it's like to lose your family. And I'll be damned if I let a bureaucrat and a drug dealer take yours." He walked to the kitchen. "I'm making dinner. Do you eat pasta?" The next 3 hours were the strangest of Caleb's life. His kitchen, usually a sterile laboratory for protein shakes, was now a mess of flour and tomato sauce. Elena insisted on cooking. "If we are staying, I am not letting you eat boiled chicken, Mr. Ward." Watching her move in the kitchen was different now. She wasn't the invisible servant. She was a mother figure, a force of nature. She laughed when she spilled salt. She hummed. Sophia woke up hungry. She sat at the island, kicking her legs. She was shy around Caleb at first, eyeing him like he was a large, dangerous statue. "Are you a giant?" Sophia asked, biting into a piece of garlic bread. "Sophia," Elena scolded gently. Caleb stopped chopping vegetables. He looked at the girl. He actually smiled. It was a rusty, unused thing, but it was there. "Some people think so," Caleb said, "but I'm just a retired sailor." "You don't have a boat," Sophia observed. "I used to. A small one, with guns." Sophia's eyes went wide. "Cool." For the first time in 2 years, the echo in the house was gone. The sounds of silverware clinking, of a child's high-pitched question, of Elena's soft reprimands, it filled the void Caleb hadn't realized was drowning him. But beneath the domestic warmth, Caleb was working. He had his phone on the counter. He was running background checks. He had contacts, buddies who had moved into private intelligence and federal law enforcement. He texted a name, Morales, Maria. Look for custody disputes. Look for a father named... He asked Elena for the name, Ricardo Velez. The reply came back 20 minutes later. Ricardo Velez. 2 priors for assault. Suspicion of distribution. Currently clean on paper. Represented by illicit funds lawyer. Caleb's jaw tightened. Elena was telling the truth. The system was failing this child. After dinner, Elena put Sophia to bed in the guest room The actual guest room with the fluffy duvet, not the closet. She came back downstairs to find Caleb standing by the window in the dark living room, watching the gate monitors. "She's asleep," Elena said softly. "She thinks this is a vacation." "A castle. It is a castle," Caleb murmured. "And the siege is beginning." He pointed to the screen. The gray sedan had moved. It was now parked directly in front of the gate. And then, headlights swept across the monitor. A second car had arrived. He brought backup, Caleb noted. "What do we do?" Elena asked, fear creeping back into her voice. "We do nothing," Caleb said. "We wait. Let them make the mistake." He turned to Elena. "You need to understand something, Elena. If we do this, if I help you, we have to do it my way. No more secrets. No more hiding in garages. We go on the offensive, legally and otherwise." "I have no money for lawyers," she said. "I do," Caleb said simply. "But first, we have to survive the night." The intercom at the gate buzzed. It was a harsh, electronic sound that made Elena jump. Caleb pressed the talk button. "Identify." "Mr. Ward?" A slick voice came through the speaker. "My name is Detective Miller. I'm with the Sheriff's Department. I need you to open the gate." Elena grabbed Caleb's arm. "That's not a detective. That's the PI. Velez hired him. He's an ex-cop, corrupt." Caleb looked at the screen. The man at the gate was wearing a windbreaker that said police on it, but his stance was wrong. He was leaning against the buzzer, chewing gum. Sloppy. "Do you have a warrant, Detective?" Caleb asked calmly. "I have probable cause to believe you are harboring a fugitive and a minor child," the voice spat back. "Open the gate, or we come in and I charge you with kidnapping." Caleb looked at Elena. She was trembling. This was the moment. He could press a button, open the gate, and end the complication. He could go back to his silence, his running, his mourning. It was the safe play. Caleb looked at the monitor, then at Elena. "Elena," he said, "go upstairs, stay with Sophia. Put on headphones." "What are you going to do?" Caleb walked to the front door. He pulled a heavy, tactical flashlight from the side table. He didn't pick up a gun. He didn't need one. "I'm going to teach them a lesson about property rights," Caleb said. He opened the front door and stepped out into the rain. Caleb walked down the driveway. He didn't run. He walked with a deliberate, terrifying slowness. The rain soaked his shirt, plastering it to his muscular frame. He reached the heavy iron gate. Through the bars, he saw two men. One was the detective, a heavy-set man with a ruddy face. The other was younger, skittish, wearing a hoodie. "Open up!" the heavy man shouted. "I know she's in there!" Caleb stopped 3 feet from the gate. He stood in the shadows, his face obscured. "You are trespassing on private property," Caleb said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried over the sound of the rain. "Listen, buddy," the fake detective sneered. "I'm a cop." "Badge number?" Caleb asked. "I don't have to show you squat. Now open the—" "You are not a police officer," Caleb interrupted. "You are Arthur Artie Simmons, private investigator license number 44902, revoked in 2021 for misconduct." The man froze. "How the hell?" "Facial recognition is a useful tool." Caleb lied. He had just guessed based on the info his buddy sent, but the confidence sold it. "And the man with you is likely Ricardo Velez, or an associate." The younger man in the hoodie took a step back. "We just want the girl," the heavy man growled, dropping the pretense. "Give us the kid, and we leave. You don't want trouble with Velez." Caleb stepped into the light of the gate lamp. For the first time, they saw him clearly. The scars on his arms, the dead, flat look in his eyes that only men who have seen the worst of humanity possess. "You have a misconception about what trouble is," Caleb said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. I have just sent the license plates of both your vehicles to the state troopers. I informed them that 2 armed men are attempting a home invasion. You're bluffing, Artie said, though he looked nervous. My ETA for the troopers is 6 minutes, Caleb said, checking his watch. I can hold this gate for 6 minutes. Can you? Caleb didn't yell. He didn't threaten violence. He simply presented a reality that the other men couldn't control. This was the gray man technique, using information and psychology to de-escalate or redirect a threat without firing a shot. Sirens wailed in the distance, faint, but growing louder. The younger man panicked. Artie, let's go. I can't get picked up again. Damn it! Artie kicked the gate. This isn't over, Ward. You're hiding a kidnapper. I'm protecting my household, Caleb said. Leave. The 2 men scrambled back to their cars. Tires screeched on the wet pavement as they peeled away, disappearing into the dark just as the blue lights of the state troopers crested the hill. Caleb watched them go. He waited until the troopers passed, then turned and walked back toward the house. His heart was beating steady and slow. He felt a sensation he hadn't felt since Sarah died. He felt useful. He entered the house. Elena was at the top of the stairs, Sophia peeking through the banister. Did they go away? Sophia whispered. Caleb looked up at them. He was wet, cold, and tired. Yes, Caleb said. They're gone. Are you a superhero? Sophia asked seriously. Caleb shook his head. No, I'm just the guy who locks the gate. But as he looked at Elena, he saw a look of profound gratitude that made his chest ache. He realized then that the hardest part wasn't going to be fighting the bad guys. The hardest part was going to be opening his heart enough to let these people stay. The house on the cliff, once a mausoleum of silence, had transformed into a center of operations. For the next week, Caleb Ward did not clean guns or brood over tactical maps of the past. He applied the same intensity he had once used for counterinsurgency operations to a new mission: domestic stability. He realized quickly that protecting Elena and Sophia required more than just locked gates. It required mental fortification. Elena was living in a state of hypervigilance, jumping at every shadow. Sophia was quiet, absorbing her aunt's anxiety like a sponge. On Tuesday morning, Caleb found Sophia sitting by the massive infinity pool in the backyard. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a cold, crisp gray sky. The water was heated, steam rising off the surface like mist on a jungle river. You like the water? Caleb asked, approaching quietly. Sophia shook her head. It's too big and deep. It's only deep if you don't know how to float, Caleb said. He crouched down next to her. In the Navy, the water is our friend, but you have to respect it. Do you know what panic does? Makes you scream? It makes you sink, Caleb corrected gently. Panic makes you heavy. Calm makes you light. Elena was watching from the kitchen window, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. She wanted to run out there, to pull Sophia back, to keep her safe in a bubble. But she forced herself to watch. She saw Caleb extend a hand. She saw Sophia hesitate, then take it. What followed was a lesson not just in swimming, but in life. Caleb didn't just throw her in. He explained the mechanics of buoyancy. He explained breathing. Observe, Caleb said, his voice carrying over the water. Look at the water. Is it moving? Is it still? Still, Sophia said. Orient, Caleb continued. Where are the steps? Where am I? Right there. Decide, Caleb said. Do you want to get in? Yes. Act. Sophia stepped onto the first step. Later that evening, over a dinner of roasted chicken, Caleb insisted on cooking this time, utilizing a strict timer. He explained the concept to Elena. The OODA loop, Caleb said, sketching a diagram on a napkin. Observe, orient, decide, act. It's how fighter pilots think. It's how you survive a crisis. Right now, Elena, you are stuck in observe. So you are watching the threat, but you aren't orienting yourself to the new reality. You're paralyzed. Elena looked at the diagram. I'm just scared, Caleb. Velez has money now. Drug money. Hidden well. He has a lawyer who destroys people. I'm a cleaning lady. I don't have a loop. I have a mop. You are not just a cleaning lady, Caleb said firmly. You are the primary asset in this operation. You know Velez. You know his patterns. You know where he hides things. Elena looked away. I know enough to be terrified. Good, Caleb said. Fear is data. Use it. What does he want? He wants Sophia, Elena whispered. But not because he loves her. He wants the trust fund. Caleb paused. Trust fund? Maria, she had a small settlement from a workplace injury years ago. It wasn't much, maybe $50,000, but she put it in a trust for Sophia. Velez found out about it last month. He can't touch it unless he has full custody. Caleb sat back in his chair. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The motivation wasn't paternal instinct, it was greed. Greed was predictable. Greed was a weakness. If it's about money, Caleb said, a cold smile touching his lips, then we have a lever, but we need to be ready. He won't just come with lawyers. Men like Velez, when they get desperate, they get sloppy. He's coming back, isn't he? Yes, Caleb said. And when he does, we won't be hiding in the garage. The attack, when it came, was silent and administrative. 2 days later, a process server arrived at the gate. Caleb met him. The man handed over a thick envelope. It was an emergency court order. Habeas corpus. Produce the body. The order stated that Elena Morales was unlawfully detaining a minor child, Sofia Velez, and was ordered to surrender the child to the custody of her father, Ricardo Velez, by 10:02 a.m. on Friday. Failure to comply would result in a warrant for Elena's arrest for kidnapping and interference with custody. They had 24 hours. Elena read the papers in the living room, her face draining of color. She dropped the stack on the coffee table as if it were burning. It's over, she choked out. The judge signed it. If I don't give her up tomorrow, they arrest me. Then he takes her anyway, and I can't protect her. Sophia was upstairs, playing with a set of old Lego bricks Caleb had dug out of the attic. Remnants of a life he thought he'd have with Sarah. Children that never came. Caleb picked up the legal documents. He read them with the same detachment he used to read mission briefings. This judge, Caleb noted, Judge Holloway. He's known for being tough on custodial interference. He believes Velez is a grieving father, Elena said bitterly. And I'm the crazy aunt who stole his daughter. Caleb stood up and walked to his desk. He picked up the phone. I'm calling Marcus. Marcus was Caleb's attorney, a shark in a three-piece suit who operated out of a glass tower in downtown Seattle. He was expensive, aggressive, and owed Caleb his life from a particularly messy extraction in a destabilized region years ago when Marcus had been a diplomat. Caleb put the phone on speaker. It's tight, Caleb. Marcus's voice crackled. The order is valid on its face. Unless we can prove immediate life-threatening danger, the judge won't vacate it. Drug history isn't enough. He's passed his court-mandated drug tests for the last 3 months. He's cheating the tests, Elena interjected. I know he is. Knowing it and proving it are two different things, Ms. Morales, Marcus said gently. Without physical evidence of abuse or neglect current to this time frame, the law defaults to the biological parent. If you don't hand the child over tomorrow, the sheriff will come with a SWAT team if they have to. Caleb, you could be charged as an accessory. Silence filled the room. The rain tapped against the glass. A relentless metronome counting down the time. So we need a smoking gun, Caleb said. We need a cannon, Marcus corrected. We need something that proves he is in active danger right now. Not 5 years ago. Caleb looked at Elena. She was weeping silently, defeated. "I have to give her up," she whispered. "I can't let you go to jail, Caleb. I can't let them traumatize her with a raid." Caleb hung up the phone. He walked over to Elena and knelt down, forcing her to look at him. "We are not surrendering," he said. "There is no choice." "There is always a choice," Caleb said. "We changed the battlefield. You said he's cheating the tests." "How?" Elena wiped her eyes. He used to keep clean urine in the freezer. From his cousin. He keeps a stash of clean supplies in his safe, along with his ledger." "A ledger?" Caleb's eyes sharpened. "He keeps a book. Who owes him? Who he pays? He's paranoid. He writes everything down." "Where is the safe?" "In his house, under the floorboards in the master closet." Caleb stood up. He checked his watch. 19 Daqui hours. His house is in West Seattle, right? The blue bungalow? "Yes," Elena said, her eyes widening. "Caleb, no, you can't. That's burglary. That's breaking and entering. You are a decorated veteran. You can't throw your life away for us." Caleb didn't answer. He walked to the hallway closet, the one that was always locked. He keyed in a code. The door clicked open. Inside was not a vacuum cleaner. It was a tactical loadout room. Body armor, non-lethal suppression gear, night vision optics. He didn't take a gun. He took a set of lockpicks, a compact camera, and a pair of black gloves. "I'm not going to steal anything," Caleb said calmly. "I'm going to conduct a reconnaissance mission. If I find the ledger, I photograph it. If I find the stash, I document it. Then Marcus takes it to the judge at 8:30 a.m. It's too dangerous. He has dogs. He has a security system. I've breached compounds guarded by warlords, Elena," Caleb said, pulling on a black beanie. "A drug dealer in West Seattle is manageable. Let me go with you," Elena said, standing up. "No, you stay with the asset. You protect Sophia." "I know the code to the alarm," Elena said. Caleb stopped. He turned to look at her. "He never changed it," Elena said. "It's 1984, his birth year. He's lazy." Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Having the code changed the risk profile from high to moderate. "Write it down," Caleb said, "and keep your phone on. If I'm not back by 0200, you call Marcus." He walked out the back door into the night, a shadow slipping into the darkness. Caleb moved through the backyard of Ricardo Velez's house like smoke. The rain was his ally. It masked the sound of his boots and kept the neighbors indoors. The house was dark, but a flickering blue light from the living room window suggested a TV was on. "Subject is likely asleep or sedated," Caleb assessed. He moved to the back door. He checked the frame for sensors. He typed in 1984 on the keypad. The light turned green. Sloppy. He entered the kitchen. The smell was stale. Cigarettes, old beer, and something chemical. The house was a mess. Pizza boxes stacked on the counter. Caleb moved slowly, testing every floorboard before shifting his weight. He bypassed the living room where Velez was passed out on the recliner. A half-empty bottle of whiskey on the floor. Caleb moved to the bedroom. It was exactly as Elena had described. A chaotic nest of dirty laundry. He opened the closet door. He knelt down and pulled back the carpet in the corner. There was a loose board. He pried it up. The safe was there. It was a small digital sentry safe. Cheap. Vulnerable. Caleb didn't need to crack it. It was already unlocked. The door was slightly ajar. Complacency kills. Caleb opened it. Inside, he found a stack of cash, maybe $5,000. He found a plastic bottle of yellowish liquid, the clean urine. And he found the book, a small black notebook. Caleb pulled out his camera. He began photographing every page. Names, dates, amounts. It was a ledger of meth distribution. It was enough to put Velez away for 20 years. He was on the last page when the floorboard in the hallway creaked. Caleb froze. He killed his flashlight. "Who's there?" Velez's voice was groggy but aggressive. Caleb silently lowered the floorboard, but he didn't have time to replace the carpet perfectly. He slid into the deep shadows behind the hanging winter coats. Velez stumbled into the room. He flipped on the light. He was a wiry man, tattoos covering his neck, holding a baseball bat. "I heard you," Velez hissed. "Come out, you rat." He swung the bat at the pile of laundry. Then he turned toward the closet. Caleb controlled his breathing. He was unarmed. He could disable Velez easily, but that would be assault. It would complicate the legal case. He needed to escape unseen. Velez reached for the coats. He parted them. Caleb wasn't there. He had utilized the brief moment Velez turned his back to roll under the bed. It was a tight squeeze, dust bunnies pressing into his face, but he was clear. Velez cursed, kicking the closet door. "Damn rats!" He turned off the light and stumbled back to the living room. Caleb waited 10 full minutes. Then he slid out, retrieved the camera, and exited the house the same way he came in. He had the evidence. He drove back to Oak Creek, the adrenaline fading into a cold focus. He arrived at 0300. Elena was waiting in the kitchen, pacing. "Did you get it?" she asked, rushing to him. Caleb placed the memory card on the counter. "I got everything." "Marcus is waking up the judge. They thought they had won. They thought the checkmate was delivered. But they had underestimated the desperation of a man who knows his world is collapsing." The next morning, 0900 hours. Caleb, Elena, and Sophia were in the living room. Marcus had called. The judge was reviewing the evidence. The sheriff had been notified to hold off on the transfer. But Velez didn't wait for the sheriff. The front gate smashed open. Not electronically, physically. A heavy-duty pickup truck with a bull bar rammed through the iron gates, twisting the metal like paper. Caleb was on his feet instantly. "Upstairs! Panic room!" He ushered Elena and Sophia toward the hidden panel in the library. But as they reached the hallway, the front door exploded inward. Velez was there. But he wasn't alone. He had 3 men with him, hard men, armed with tire irons and a shotgun. "You think you can steal from me?" Velez screamed, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He wasn't acting on logic anymore. He had found the safe empty. Caleb hadn't taken the book, but he had moved the cash to make it look like a robbery. A distraction that apparently worked too well. "Get out of my house," Caleb said, stepping between the intruders and the women. He stood with his hands open, palms out, no weapon. "You took my money," Velez raised the shotgun, "and you took my kid." "Go, Elena," Caleb said calmly, not taking his eyes off the gun. "No," Elena said. Caleb risked a glance back. Elena had stopped. She wasn't running to the panic room. She was standing her ground. She walked past Caleb. "Elena, get back!" Caleb barked. Elena ignored him. She walked straight toward Velez and the shotgun. She looked different. Her shoulders were back. Her eyes were dry. "I didn't take your money, Ricardo," Elena said, her voice steady and loud. "But I took something else." Velez hesitated, confused by her boldness. "What?" Elena reached into her pocket. She pulled out her phone. She held it up. "I took a video," she lied, "of you, last year, when you beat Maria." The room went silent. Velez's face twitched. "You're lying," he sneered. "Maria never told anyone." She didn't," Elena said, stepping closer until the barrel of the shotgun was inches from her chest. "But I was there that night, hiding in the closet, just like Sophia hides from you. I saw it. I recorded it. And I just emailed it to the news. And the police. And your suppliers." Velez lowered the gun slightly, fear flickering in his eyes. You bitch." If you shoot me, Elena said, her voice ringing with a power Caleb had never seen in her, you go to prison for life. If you leave now, maybe you get a head start before the police get here. It was a bluff. There was no video. Elena was using the OODA loop. She had observed his fear, oriented on his paranoia, decided to bluff, and acted with total conviction. Velez looked at his men. They looked nervous. Sirens were wailing in the distance. Real ones this time. "Let's go, Rick," one of the men said. "This is too much heat." Velez looked at Elena, then at Sophia peeking from the stairs. He spat on the floor. "Keep the brat," he snarled. "She's too much trouble anyway." He turned and ran. The men followed. They piled into the truck and reversed out of the driveway, tires smoking. Caleb stood there, stunned. He had been ready to fight. He had been ready to disable them, to take a bullet if necessary. But he hadn't needed to. Elena had saved them. She stood trembling in the middle of the foyer, the phone slipping from her hand. Caleb walked over and caught her just as her knees gave out. "I lied," she whispered into his chest. "I didn't have a video." Caleb held her tight, looking at the broken door, the rain blowing in. "You didn't lie," Caleb said softly. "You fought." The flashing blue lights of the police cruisers didn't look like a threat anymore. They looked like closure. Ricardo Velez didn't make it far. His erratic driving, combined with Caleb's tip to the state troopers and the evidence from the ledger, led to his arrest on the interstate less than 10 miles from Oak Creek. The ledger found in the safe, coupled with the drugs found in his truck during the arrest, was enough to revoke his bail, his custody claims, and his freedom for a very long time. The siege was over, but the silence that followed was louder than the sirens. 2 days later, the front door was repaired. The glass was replaced. The mud was cleaned from the foyer. The physical scars of the event were erased with the same efficiency Caleb applied to everything else. Elena was in the kitchen, folding dish towels. Her movements were slow, heavy. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the bluff and the police interviews had evaporated, leaving behind a deep, aching exhaustion. She had her bags packed. They were sitting by the back door, the same duffel bag she had snuck in weeks ago. Caleb entered the kitchen. He had just finished a call with Marcus. The custody order was permanent. Elena was Sophia's legal guardian. The trust fund was secure. "Marcus says the paperwork will be finalized by Monday," Caleb said, leaning against the counter. He was wearing a sweater, not a tactical jacket. He looked softer, younger. "Thank you," Elena said, not looking up. "For everything. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't." "I do," Elena insisted. She smoothed a towel unnecessarily. "I calculated the rent for the weeks we stayed. And the food. I can work it off over the next 6 months. I'll come in on weekends, too." Caleb frowned. "Is that what you think this was? A transaction?" Elena stopped. She looked at him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mr. Ward, Caleb, you are a good man. But I know you. You like your order. You like your silence. We brought chaos into your house. We broke your rules. Now that the danger is gone, we should go. Let you have your peace back." Caleb looked around the kitchen. It was clean. It was orderly. But without Sophia's drawings on the fridge, without the smell of Elena's cooking, without the tension of life happening within these walls, it didn't feel like peace. It felt like death. "Come with me," Caleb said. "Where?" "The living room." Elena followed him. In the center of the room, on the coffee table, sat a small ceramic bowl. It was blue, but it had a crack running through it that had been filled with a shimmering gold lacquer. "Do you know what this is?" Caleb asked. Elena shook her head. "It's called kintsugi," Caleb explained. "It's a Japanese art form. When a piece of pottery breaks, They don't throw it away. They repair it with gold. The idea is that the break and the repair are part of the object's history. They make it more beautiful, not less. They don't hide the scars. They highlight them. Elena touched the gold vein running through the blue ceramic. It was rough, real, and beautiful. My life broke 2 years ago, Caleb said quietly, when Sarah died. I tried to glue it back together with routine, with silence, with walls, but it wasn't fixed. It was just broken pieces held together by discipline. He looked at Elena. Then you brought a sick child into my shower. Caleb smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. And you broke the walls. You and Sophia. You didn't bring chaos. You brought the gold. Elena started to cry, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Don't leave, Caleb said. His voice was husky. The house is too big. The silence is too loud. And frankly, I've forgotten how to use the washing machine. Elena laughed through her tears, a wet, choking laugh of relief. I can't be your maid anymore, Caleb, she said. Not after all this. It would be weird. Agreed, Caleb nodded. You're not the maid. You're the house manager, or whatever title you want. But mostly, your family. You and Sophia. Christmas morning arrived with a vengeance. It didn't rain. For once in the Pacific Northwest, it snowed. A light dusting of white powder coated the pine trees and the roof of the house on the cliff. Inside, the fireplace was roaring. A tree, standing 12 feet tall, dominated the corner of the living room. It was decorated with a chaotic mix of expensive glass ornaments, Sarah's, and paper snowflakes cut out by a 6-year-old, Sophia's. It was a masterpiece of kintsugi, the old and the new, the grief and the hope bonded together. Sophia was tearing into a present. It was a wetsuit for the summer, Caleb said, sipping his coffee. We're going to learn to surf. The ocean is only cold if you're not prepared. Awesome, Sophia yelled. Elena sat on the sofa, her legs tucked under her. She was wearing a new cashmere cardigan, a gift from Caleb. She looked at the man who had been a terrifying statue just a month ago. He was laughing as Sophia tried to put the wetsuit on over her pajamas. Caleb caught Elena's eye. There was no grand romantic declaration. There was no movie kiss. There didn't need to be. There was something stronger. Safety. There was the profound intimacy of two people who had seen each other at their lowest points. Wet, scared, grieving, desperate, and had chosen to stay. Caleb looked out the window at the snow. He thought about the tactical maps in his drawer. He thought about the missions he had run, the lives he had taken, the life he had lost. He realized that the hardest mission of his life hadn't been in the SEAL teams. The hardest mission had been opening the bathroom door that day, walking into the steam, and deciding to care. He had completed the mission. Caleb? Sophia asked, pulling on his arm. Can we go outside? Can we build a snowman? Caleb stood up. He felt light. He felt ready. Negative on the snowman, Caleb said, his face serious. Sophia's face fell. We are not building a snowman, Caleb corrected, grabbing his coat. We are constructing a snow fortification perimeter with defensive snowball capabilities. Sophia squealed. Elena laughed, a sound that filled the high ceilings of the house. Caleb walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold. But this time, he wasn't alone. He left the door unlocked, because he finally had something worth letting in.